The F5 Local Traffic Manager troubleshooting concepts. Better look out, there's going to be trouble, and we should be able to find it. With troubleshooting big IP concepts, we're going to kind of go through, well, a number of different things. We're going to talk about stuff really having to do with some base troubleshooting methodology. One, it's a good review in general, but two, it's one of those things that F5 wants to make sure that we have kind of down pat. It's all part of that process. We'll also review things as far as our detailed flow diagram. Now, I know we took this up, at least introduced it a little bit back in the traffic concepts nugget. So we had, really an initial view at that point, but now we should be more at a point where things make more sense in there, and we can actually follow it and really look at the details. And again, when we're troubleshooting connectivity, it's good to know what's supposed to happen or what should be happening in order to determine what isn't happening. Okay? Helps us with that. And then we'll go through a number of different things as far as introducing different troubleshooting tools, just little concepts that we can bring about here and there. Okay? Kind of a listing or a smattering of stuff, I suppose, is a good way to look at that. So real quick, as far as our information for troubleshooting. And I'm kind of going through, my base method on here. Okay, and again, this is very generic as far as where we're at. But figure out what is the problem or what is the issue, if you will. So ask yourself a question: what's working? What's not working? What's supposed to be happening? The hypothesis for it. Okay, well, what do we think it might be? What area would we happen to be in? Try something out. Okay, see whether it works. To figure out what it is that actually happened there. Analyzing the results is very, very important. Along with that, by the way, I would say that if something doesn't work, remove it. Take out whatever you did change so that we're not compounding the problem or adding new and exciting problems into the mix for whatever reason. And of course, when we're done, hopefully make a successful conclusion or determination what the actual problem is along the way. Now, and again, that's just generic troubleshooting ideas. When we start looking at things and kind of bringing it into the mix here, there's going to be a lot of pieces that are kind of involved in it that F5 wants us to look at. Interestingly enough, one of the things that we're actually going to be tested on has to do with how to open up a support case with F5's TAC, right? The Technical Assistance Center. So when we start looking at this, one of the first steps in that is to get a full description. And that really involves many, many different things. So we'll say, what has, symptoms of issue. Basically what's happening, what does it look like kind of thing. Time frame, so looking at a time frame of first occurrence, as well as the number of times something has happened. Any error output. So your F5, your big IP system can produce that. Can you reproduce it? Basically, is it recurring or going to be intermittent in there? Any changes? Basically, have you messed anything up along the way? Always good stuff to ask and go through in there. And we'll just call it steps taken. Basically, have you come up with any hypothesis so far, or done any tests, or analyzed anything yourself? The next part that it has to do with that we need to tell their TAC guys is the impact. This will help us kind of get the severity involved, if you will. Okay, so is it going to be, site down? Is it going to be, I guess we'll call it site at risk, but we'll just say critical impact. Or just performance degraded. Or is it just general question? And that pretty much in that order will set the 4 severity levels that we have. So, severity 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, which also has to do, by the way, with the response time that they're going to be guaranteed to give us. The next part, well, or 3, I guess, we'll just call it contact info. Basically, how did I get a hold of you? And number 4 would be any logs or files. And this could be a number of different things. We got a QK view, you got log files, you got any packet traces, any SSL dumps, UCS archives. We've talked about that stuff before. So my base configuration, any core files if there's any crashes or kernel panics or anything along those lines. But basically anything necessary to help them out. So lots of different things going on here to help us sit and call TAC. Okay. Now, when we do look at this, the cases that we come up with, so severity levels, Sev 1, Sev 2, Sev 3, and Sev 4. Again, impacting what we have over here. And our response time is actually pretty good for these things. So Sev 1 and Sev 2 both have a 1-hour response time. Sev 3 is 4 hours, and Sev 4 is 24 hours. If you need to change these out, by the way, just call back and ask to talk to an escalation manager or case manager, and they'll be able to change things. If you decide that what starts out as a general question and really you didn't get resolved or anything, now it starts to truly impact something. Or you had a scheduled maintenance window that before you did something beforehand, but now you're pretty much up on the maintenance window and really need to get things going. So whatever it may be in here, or we're going from a 3 to a 2, or whatever it's going to be going on, anything that changes, need to let people know about that. Now, that's just, the idea of dealing with TAC in there. When we start troubleshooting ourselves, so when we're going to go in here, and kind of look at our steps taken, or things that we were thinking about ahead of time, or hopefully doing on our own, whenever you see just one small error, it's not like you should rush out and just call support. Yes, I know you have support contracts, but there's a little bit of pride, there's a little bit of knowledge or self-esteem, I guess, as far as being able to do things yourself and being able to solve problems yourself. So the more that we know going in, the more we'll be able to enhance our own experience and deal with these things ourselves, which is really pretty cool. So next thing I want to look at is going to be our detailed flow information. Now, we get a lot of stuff going on with this, and just like we did before anyway, starts at our packet ingress. And the first thing that we're going to run across is a packet filter. So any of those filters that we created, anything that goes on, that's going to tell us a yes or no, kind of give us a yes or no answer, and say we're either going to continue to process it, or we're just going to go ahead and drop the damn thing. Reject it, discard, whichever, action you happen to put on there. But assuming that everything is going to be okay with that, then we'll go forward and kind of look at things and go to our connection table, which will go for not just our connection table, but our persistence table if necessary, and see, do we already have something set up? Have we gone through these processes already? And if not, if it's in a persistence table, we'll go ahead and just jump back in there. Otherwise, we'll go through my virtual server setup, my client issues in there, and really go through the listener portion of figuring out how does a virtual server decide, well, I suppose we'll call it a virtual server listener, because we first decide which of my virtual servers is it going to go with. We've got a listing or a smattering of different ones right here. And it's all about being most specific. So if I have an IP and port, which is my first one right there, then that's going to be the most specific. Okay, so single IP address goes right to it. If I have an IP address and anything, so an asterisk, any port, then that's my next most specific one. We'll call the next one a network. So instead of a single IP, I mean, yes, it'll still be a single IP because we've got virtual servers, but we also can have our virtual server set up for a range, okay, which basically uses a net mask. So /32 for these guys, and something bigger than /32 down here. So a network and a specific port number, or a network and any port number. Okay, kind of a bad asterisk, but you get the idea in there. And then last but not least is my default. So those are the order that we're going to go in as far as selecting which virtual server. And what do we do after we pick a virtual server? That's right, we got to figure out where it's going to go to beyond that. So that would be my pool or my load balancing. So I got to check and make sure that, you know, everybody's in there, all the stuff that's going to be going on for it, that's all set up and ready to go. So down over here is going to be my resource selection portion. So the load balancing itself, which method we're looking at, my verification, stuff like that, which means that I have to have the pools, my load balancing selection, I have to have available pool members, and everything really all ready to go. And if I've got priority groups and stuff like that, will determine how I'm going to pick which specific resource I'm going to hand it off to, but that's hopefully where I get my LB selected or LB failed over here, but hopefully I get something where we're actually sending information through there. And if I have to do any destination NAT or anything now, you know, like that along the way, that's going to be done. It's going to be selected and chosen based on configuration inside my pools. And then, hopefully, in the end, I get to route my packet. We may divert along the way depending on what's going to be selected, like an SNAT or something like that, or if there's any NAT or anything else along the way. So we may have certain diversions going on based on configuration, but the more that we understand the pieces in here and each of those areas' selection processes, then the better off that we're going to be to, well, you know, figure everything out with it, to understand what is working, what is not working, and all of that. So any good troubleshooting has to do with understanding what the flow is or what's supposed to be happening to begin with based on what you and I have sat here and configured. One of the cool things that we have at our disposal under local traffic is the network map. And this gives us kind of a nice overview, if you will, of exactly what's going on, how things are configured, what my different virtual servers are, what pools are associated with it, and then the members of those pools. And along with that comes all the statuses. Now, in troubleshooting, it's also very important to understand what these status symbols happen to be. Green is obviously good. But we have a number of different icons that we can be using or could be seeing along the way in there. So we want to look at stuff like, you know, the green dot, up, available, awesome. Red, on the other hand, bad. So something is down or offline or unavailable in there, not able to be processing traffic. Blue, on the other hand, will be unknown if we're not either don't have a monitor set up, as an example, we're just not getting any feedback whatsoever, hasn't failed, but at the same time, it's not telling us what's happening. The yellow, unavailability, means that it's still there, it's still good from a physical type standpoint or a monitoring standpoint, but there's something else, like a connection limit that we've set up in our configuration that we've exceeded. So for some reason it's unavailable. The yellow is a temporary thing that will change all by itself. Red or blue, you and I need to go do something about to figure out why it's that way and to fix it. So looking at logs would always be a good thing. We also have different versions of black. Now black means there was a user intervention someplace along the way, because it means that you or I went and actually disabled the particular device or pool member. So something in there, we made that happen. So it's not the system's fault either for monitoring or anything else. If it's the circle, which, note, it's just like the circle up here is a good thing, which means that if we re-enabled it, manually had to go and re-enable that, then we'd be back in the green and everything should be perfectly fine. On this part with the diamond, well, that's going to be a little bit different. Now, there's the words here, hold off on the words for a minute because there's still double meaning for stuff. Because black does mean that we've had user intervention to it, but without it, we may still have a problem where we're not doing something. In this, and you may see the circle for either disabled or forced offline, just like you can see the diamond for the same thing for either one of them. The difference between disabled and forced offline. Again, both of them are selections that you and I would make for things, but if I'm forced offline, that means I'm not going to get anything new, but if there's any existing or any persistent entries, clients, and stuff like that, connections, those will still get processed just fine. If I go disabled, on the other hand, it's all gone. Everything's thrown out the window. No more connections, no more nothing. That's that. So we got to know what it is that we're looking at. And again, everything that our F5, that our big IP system tells us, there's lots of information out there. So know what it is that we're looking at or how we're going to go through and look at things on here. That's going to help us get more information along the way. So that's kind of a starting point for what it is that I'm going to see. Now I want to go through kind of a whole slew of different tools and stuff that's going to be available for us. There's going to be a lot of information thrown out here, but it's good to be familiar with everything that we might end up seeing or being asked about or running into or needing to use along the way. Okay? And these are things that any F5 or big IP administrator should be familiar with. So when we start out and kind of discover that we have some problem along the way, one of those ideas that we can get into is to check our network access. Okay? And how is it that we do that? Well, I mean, you got plenty of tools available to help you out with that. We can ping, we can trace route, we can, go into the shell on the ADC and do, telnet or SSH or stuff like that because, again, it is a Unix box on there. So we have lots of things that we could do to look at things like that. We can also check statistics. Okay, and checking statistics, these would be, on the main menu, statistics, and then go to module statistics and probably global traffic. But that'll tell us which server has been getting information. So I see that I have, these three have been getting everything. Is that what's supposed to happen? Maybe check out my pool configuration to make sure those are what's going to be on there. See what's happening, make sure everything's in there. You may have an access policy in there that may be defined on the virtual server. Basically, check your settings. I know that you and I are going to put a lot of thought into anything that we configure. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes now and then. Been there, done that, seen it happen. It happens. It's one of those deals. Another part that you could get into, depending on, what we're trying to do or trying to test, don't forget, as you get on here and try to access the ADC system to test it out, because remember, we got, one connection that's right here, got another connection right here. So if you're just trying to get to this box and ping it or, telnet to it or web to it or whatever and test it out, don't forget about those port lockdown things. So you may very well have disabled that intentionally, but that will affect your testing procedure and stuff like that in there. So just be careful with what it is that we're looking at or going to see in there. As we look at things and see statistics and stuff like that, you got to keep in mind, all these guys, when you see a normal closed connection, the F5 will take care of everything. Okay, does all that magically in there. If for some reason, whether it be from the server or the client side, we don't see a connection properly closed, how long do you keep it open? And we got timers for all that stuff on there. So we may have, we'll just call it the connection table. But we have a process called reaping. And it's kind of like the Grim Reaper. You get the Grim Reaper coming in and using his scythe to kind of cut through any connections that have been hanging out too long. But basically just culls the longer-term idle connections, based on our timers and everything like that. We have monitors that work all the time, and those are the important things to make sure that we set up for our pools, for the nodes, for the servers, the individual services themselves, whatever we got going on, but always check my monitor configuration. And that should be fairly visible in the network map. If everything's green, well, my monitors are obviously set up correctly, but at the same time, they might not be monitoring what I want them to. So back when we talked about the monitors as an example, what was the HTTP one? That's a good one to look at. With the HTTP monitor, by itself, so we leave everything at the default, all it does is send out a web request, and it doesn't care what it gets back. As long as it gets a response back, then life is good. Green light, we're good to go. Well, if I have to be specific about my one important web application or one specific page, well, I probably need to change the monitor. Let it monitor those things that are important to me, to the users, to give me actual status as to what's going on. So, I mean, again, part of that troubleshooting is understanding what's supposed to happen, or what the ADC thinks is supposed to happen based on what we've told it, and then figuring out what the gaps are between what it thinks should be happening and what we want to be happening. Because very often we got something in there going on. So as we start looking at it, you know, we can do lots of different things for monitoring. Check your configuration is always a good part to it. The other thing that we can do is to monitor the debugs, or start doing debugs on the monitoring daemon. Now I have to do this, by the way, I'll change to red here, through TMSH. So TMSH right there. And what we're going to do is say modify the sys db, and then it'll be big D.debug. And then just tell it enable or disable when you're done with it. But at this point in time, that's going to tell us to turn on the debugging, and then we can just go in and take a look at the logs. Okay, so we remember where all the monitoring logs were and my MCP files and stuff like that. Okay, knowing where those logs are, we may have to go back and revisit that nugget, but go back and look at that and know where everything's going to be set up at. If not, I'll give you a little hint. They're all contained in the var/log directory, log. I can't spell tonight, but they're all contained right in their log directory. So start looking at that stuff, knowing what's going to be going on. That'll give you more detailed information for it. Other things, of course, that we can do, we can do a TCP dump. That's kind of like having Wireshark built into your device. From a usage standpoint, because that'll take a lot of CPU to do that, so certainly be aware of that in a production environment. You might not get everything that you wanted to if your system is busy. Or you're also going to be impacting other applications by forcing it to do things like that. So you might want to think about having like a sniffer port set up or a monitoring port set up on a switch that can pull things out to a different device, like running Wireshark or whatever your packet capture du jour happens to be, but some other method of pulling information. But bottom line is we can do it from the command line of my ADC as well. Okay? I do have other things just for quick tests and stuff. I can do netcat, which is just like a network catalog, give me connection monitoring and stuff like that. I have curl that's on there, which is a URL tester. So I can get, it'll be give me text-based information back, but it's just curl space -v space and then the URL, http:// blah, 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 all the information that you want. And that'll go out and actually pull that information. So from a command line, sitting right here, so you're in the middle of that box, then you can be sure that he can get to that server. Or she, I guess. I don't really know what my box is. But anyway, whatever sex the box happens to be, you can go out to your server from here to here. So if you've got a problem from here to here, that at least isolates part of it for what things you need to look at. A divide and conquer approach to troubleshooting. But know what kind of stuff is going to be available to you all along the way. So your logs, we're talking about those in there. Well, one of the things that we can do, again, get used to some Unix commands from our shell, is look at the tail command. A tail just looks at the last bit of it. You can do a more, or cat for that matter, to look at the entire thing, but you're going to be there for a while, especially day after day. Remember, we rotate the logs daily, and we keep the last, essentially 9 days, or 8 days archive plus the current day, but we have lots of information to possibly be going through. Probably want to do the tail, and you can tell it how many lines and stuff like that, but look at things like your var/log/ltm. Okay, so that's my basic traffic manager stuff, and also the big D log. And hint, hint, that's for that guy right there. So all the stuff that we're debugging, that's where it's going to go. Okay. So any of the things that we do in there, use those as far as tools that are available to us. Okay. Use your network map. It's under local traffic network map. Alright, so that's my quick and easy overview to kind of look at things and see where they're at with it. But understand what it is you're looking at and what's going to be going on to know what we're looking for. One of the other things we can do if we're looking for something important, instead of doing tail right here, I can do cat, which will list the entire file. But at the end of the line, do a pipe and say grep, and then whatever string that you want to search for. You know, something like MCPD is an example. Okay, so that would be my messaging control protocol daemon. So that's going to tell me some basic things about errors or my monitoring or configuration that has forced something to occur. So it'll separate out those particular messages. You start to get used to the daemons that are actually reporting errors that you'd want to look at, and that's the type of thing that would be good to search for. There's all sorts of help at Google and F5.com as well to kind of get you in that mode of thinking towards the information, but it's all going to be there. Now, a few other things. Let me clear this off here real quick. A few other things that are going to be available to us. Okay, different tools that we may end up running in there. We have something called an EUD. Okay, so this is End User Diagnostics. And that's actually a bootable CD. Now you can do it to a CD-ROM drive, or you can do it to like a USB key or something like that, but basically make a bootable partition to it, and that does involve a restart of your ADC, or a reboot of your ADC, so certainly be careful about that. Maintenance windows, remember, HA, and hopefully all that other good stuff that we have going on, but make sure that we know this will be service impacting. This helps us out a lot testing the hardware in detail of what it is we're using. So obviously on a virtualized machine, that's really not going to be very helpful. But hardware, physical machines, it will give me great information in there. Now, once I do that, when I go through and kind of pull everything out, when it's all done, it saves a file into the /shared/log directory of the ADC. So it is physically on that box. So obviously we can't write to our CD-ROM drive at that point, or USB key for that matter, but it puts it onto the physical device in there after checking everything out. So that'll either tell you everything's perfectly cool, or it'll give you error reports, all of which are helpful when dealing with the support folks in there. So know about the End User Diagnostics. It's an ISO file you just download from F5. It's all perfectly cool. Other things that we can take a look at is our LCD panel. Okay. Interestingly enough, there is a status light on there that tells us all sorts of things about what's going on. Right? Or at least it gives us alarms, I suppose would be kind of an easier way to look at it. And there's going to be 5 different levels of alarm that we could have. Right? So I got 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll call this one a warning. Then I have error. Then what do I get into? Alert. Critical and emergency. And a lot of it has to do with the light and what we see. So this will be a solid yellow light. This will be a blinking yellow light. Now 2 and 3 are really kind of the same thing from an alert standpoint. They're going to be a red light, but it'll be solid, and emergency is going to blink red. Alright, so I'll know exactly what's going on, even if I'm just walking by and kind of looking at it. If you see any of these things here, it's at least telling you there's something worth looking at and seeing what's going to go on. Okay, make sure that we understand those things. Other pieces that we will need to know about is going to be a QK view file, or a quick view file. That is an archive file that'll contain all sorts of stuff about your configuration, current statistics, current versions, or a chunk of logging information anyway. Basically a lot of stuff going on to give to TAC. Give to the support folks. So kind of a nice, quick and easy way to do things in there. The other thing that's really helpful, and you can do some of this yourself by the way, is a feature called iHealth. Not to be confused with Obamacare or anything fun like that, but iHealth is actually, you can get to it on the web. // what am I? Oh, just iHealth.f5.com. And what I can do is I can upload my QK view file and get some information from it, kind of click start at that point and put all the information up there, and it will give me some output. It will also assist me in creating a case should I need to do anything like that. So I got all sorts of cool things that are available to me as far as my options for helping me do troubleshooting. So know about the options available, know where to start looking for a few things, and, well, kind of the important part, play around. Certainly in the lab, don't be afraid to break things. We're going to learn a whole lot more by breaking stuff and fixing it. Again, lab would be a much better place to do that so we don't impact real life, but don't be afraid to do anything with that. Enjoy the troubleshooting, enjoy the learning. Now we had all sorts of things going on in this one. Okay, troubleshooting is an art form. It is a wonderful art form, but it is definitely an art form. So know about it, and any artist has a palette of things available to them, a palette of tools available to them. So you and I need to become familiar with several things. First of all, methodology is always a good place to start. So have a methodology in how you're going to approach your troubleshooting. Next thing to do is understand, we'll just call it the flow, but basically understand what is supposed to happen. So we'll call it a baseline. This is both from the normal processing of what your ADC is going to do, but also based on your own configuration of what you got going on in there. And then the other thing is to know about the tools, and we have a plethora of them, but the tools that we have available. And I'll just say tools/logs, because really we have a plethora of both of those in there. But all of that stuff and understanding what to look for, where to look for it, and how to get that information is all going to make a difference in what makes us better at our jobs. So it's not just about going out and doing things, but it's about what happens when something doesn't work right and how well can we fix it, and how quickly we can fix it sometimes too. So all very important things. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.